Hello, Martin. How are you today?
Hello, Ralph. We're saying names today. That's uniquely new.
Yeah, it's better than Lume plotter A, Lume plotter B, Lume plotter 1,
Yes.
Lume plotter A.
Loom plotters, plural. Yes. So what are you wearing today on this lovely Wednesday?
On this lovely Wednesday, I am wearing my Tudor Pelagos 39, which I put on the original bracelet for a change. I don't know why I did this, because I think the Jubilee from Uncle Seiko is very nice, but I decided to do it. I don't know. I had no particular reason, but I thought, let me do it. And I realized it's very comfortable. It's a really nice bracelet. The clasp is really big.
Ignoring the clasp. You know what I liked about that bracelet is that it seemingly, I don't know if this is true or not, but it seems to me that the titanium bracelet has more space between the links than a non-titanium Tudor bracelet, which for me always felt like it was not only lighter, but it was airier because air could get underneath it. Mm-hmm. So I always thought, when you look at the bracelet links, there was space in between, and I liked it. It reminded me of kind of like a little ladder bracelet.
Interesting observation. I have to figure that out, but I don't have, of course, any other Tudor at the moment. So,
Well, it doesn't have to be a Tudor. You could look at the Rolex.
Yeah, but you're right. There is quite a lot of space. Yeah, that's true.
And the Rolex ones are so tight,
Daytona,
right?
Yeah, Daytona is much tighter. That's true. Yeah, you're right.
Exactly. And I think that I did like this because of the airiness of it.
Yeah. Good point.
Yes.
What are you wearing?
Blah, 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 blah.
Blah.
Blah, 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 blah. I am wearing my Grand Seiko, the date just replacement, the linen dial, the SBG W267.
Nice.
I think.
Looks good.
267. I think it's 267. I'm going to go with that final answer. Yes, it's still, my wife loves it, which is surprising because I don't think she really liked any of my Grand Seikos. And then all of a sudden, anytime I ask what I should wear, she always chooses one of the Grand Seikos now. The blue one, the Hodinkee one, or this one, she absolutely loves. So surprising what a dial color change can do.
Sometimes you don't know. I mean, I remember my wife always telling me, Grand Seikos. She didn't like it because they looked like the watches from yesteryear, right?
Yes,
for her.
Correct.
She always thought like, this is like what my grandpa
That's exactly,
wore.
and this is one of the reasons I sold my the SBGM 221 and the SBGW 231 is because I felt the same thing. It felt like it just looked like something that was outdated.
Yeah.
And by putting a blue dial on it, it's same exact watch, but it brings it back into this modern day.
Correct.
And by changing it from a beige dial to a silver linen dial, it once again kind of rejuvenates the watch. So I totally agree with this.
You remember when we talked about the lady, what was it? Carol Kasapi from Tag Heuer, the movement director, responsible for all the movements at Tag Heuer and formerly for Cartier. She explained a couple of things to us about, let's say, the Monaco. And she said, back in the days, that was the first square watch and the first watch with a blue dial. That was, at this time, blasphemy that people would put a dial that is not like black or white or silver or something in a watch.
When did the Monaco come out?
I think it was in the 70s, no?
So I'm going to call bullshit on that one. Let me just, because I got a few in my mind already. Let me just verify when the Monaco Heuer release date was 1969. Okay, that is quite back there. Okay, all right.
So but it is interesting to see when you think about this whole idea, or even bracelet watches and all of this stuff, right? When they came out, when people said this is more like a female thing, right? I think in the beginning, before, actually, I don't know what it was, but there's a lot of these things where it's the first time that ever it happened, and you think, what, really? Is that a thing? Was that something? And what would we as watch collectors at the time then say? It's like, oh, how can they do this? Blue is not a color for watch dials. Poof.
Okay, now.
Something.
No, I have a few ideas. I just need to verify when they came out.
Yeah, in the next episode. Yeah.
When was the Tudor MN?
Oh, I don't know.
It was in the 70s, I think. It was a 70.
So the first one, yeah. I don't know.
That was 7, because that was the blue. No, 61.
61
was their first. No, sorry, 56. It goes back. But the question is, when did the first blue dial Tudor sub 1968? Do they exist? Yeah, they do. They have 68 Tudor blue subs.
So then,
reference 7016, 1968. That's a year before. The other one that I was thinking about was, it might have been something else. But there you go. Blue Tudors were out at the time. But the other thing is, the first Omega in space, the new one, has a bluish gray dial, which apparently harkens back to a limited run, which I can't figure out. Were they originally black and they turned blue, or were they originally blue? And I can't find any actual evidence of it. All we know is there was a limited number that were in this blue-gray color, and that was in 1961.
Wow. 61.
So there you go.
So, I mean, listen, that's
and that's a chronograph. So don't tell me chronograph, because that one is a chronograph.
Maybe the
I'm
information was
thinking
wrong.
your
Or
lady
maybe
doesn't know what she's talking about.
Maybe I'm remembering the history wrong, so possible. Maybe she just said, and it was with the blue dial, which was unusual for the time, something like that. Maybe
unusual, I could see, because I had to struggle to think of a few. I love proving people wrong, and let's see. But we don't have. She didn't tell me, so I don't know what she said. I don't know. Right?
As I said, it's hearsay.
It's hearsay, exactly. So do not. But we do know that that was not the first blue watch.
Okay.
Blue dial watch. Now, all right.
Yeah,
so
what happened? I have to talk about my event I went to.
Yes,
I went to the launch event of the new Roger Dubois Knights of the Round Table. And this is the Omniscient Merlin version.
Why? Why did you go?
I was invited.
Yeah, well, why? I've been invited to a lot of things I didn't go to.
Because I have a soft spot for Roger Dubois. They have very, very nice watches. Most of them that appeal to me are vintage pieces, or now vintage, right? The Monégasque, for example. If you Google this, it's a beautiful watch. At the moment, their watches are a bit on the, I think, boisterous side. They're a bit more on the sporty side. They're a bit more like the Richard Mille-ish design to a certain extent, which is not necessarily they're too big, most of them. But everything said and done, this new Roger Dubois Knights of the Round Table in rose gold and black is just so mega cool. And I had it on my wrist and I loved it. I will send you the pictures of that in my small video.
You don't have to. No, it's fine. I'm okay without it. No, I don't need it.
No, we have to send it to you. We need to post it because it's really so cool. So in this little watch, there is these hexagonal basalt things. The giant causeway in Northern Ireland was the inspiration. And that is a small phenomenon that is UNESCO World Heritage, where there are these columns pointing out on the beach made from basalt. And they are just a natural phenomenon. And nobody knows exactly how it happened, but it happened and they're there and they're not artificial. And this is exactly what the dial is. 56 of these. They are made of basalt, not of course from the UNESCO Heritage Site because it's protected, but a different basalt in black. Some of them are polished. Some of them are made of rose gold. Some of them are made of sapphire crystal. So it looks really, really cool. And then you have this 12, of course, the Knights of the Round Table. You have these 12 knights made of rose gold at each hour marker. And they're all individual, of course. And apparently there's one artisan who actually carves them out, these little sculptures, micro sculptures. And they're 6 millimeters maximum height. And he takes about 3 days each. And you can imagine 12 for each watch. There are 28 of these watches being sold. It's a limited edition. It is absolutely fascinating. And I love, the whole medieval, the knights, the King Arthur saga and all of this stuff is really cool. And what you also see is behind the knights, you have the wall of the reho, right, of the watch. And that is also sapphire crystal. So they have put the crystal into the case, and that raises up, and then the bezel is on top of that sapphire. So it's like a suspended bezel around. Pretty incredible of what they have done. Then you have a really cool designed case. The little crown is actually like a crown, shaped like a crown as well, on its head there. And it's really just a wonderful watch that you can look at forever. And of course, you have on the back, you have this whole speech of around this table, the bravest knights will gather as equals. They will be
but there's 12 of that one. Then there's 6 other versions.
Yeah, but this is the current one, right? I mean, this is the ones that are launched. They launch 2 or 3 or 4, I think, every year. But the point is that it's everything is very unique and different. Anyhow, so you have a Poinçon de Genève, a Geneva seal movement in it, which is, of course, usually Roger Dubois makes them skeletonized because every single piece is finished to an extremely high degree because it has to, as a Geneva seal watch, even the ones you don't see. And that's why they skeletonize it much, because that's one of their signature things. However, this one is not skeletonized. It just looks absolutely fantastic, and you have a brilliant movement in it. If you can rock it, it's super cool. But you do have to be able to put a 45 millimeter watch on your wrist. But it does wear smaller than you might think. So it was really amazing to see. It was amazing to see how they were built. Amazing to put it on your wrist. And it was just overall a fantastic event with lots of people who knew a lot about the brand, the watchmaking and all of this stuff. It was just fantastic. So thank you very much, Roger Dubois, for the invitation. And I will go back in a week or 2 to a watchmaking workshop there and report from that as well. And if you are in the market for a watch that is probably around 1.3 million dirhams, that's a good one. It's a really nice one.
I don't know.
I love it.
I'm looking at the pictures now, and I have to say, it is the sapphire side of the case is kind of cool that you can look through it and see the knights. Yeah. There's the macro shot of the knights looked super cool. Would I wear this? Absolutely not. Do I think
no, it's not a Martin watch. It's a Ralph watch.
No.
But that's totally okay.
I don't even think you would wear this.
You know what? Obviously, I mean, wearing a 1.3 million dirham watch is a bit out of my means.
You put Invicta on the dial and everybody would make fun of it.
No. Yeah.
Yes, they'd be like, what has Invicta done again?
But on the other hand, I mean, look, every single night is, of course, individual because it depends on the mood and whatever the...
I could 3D print the knights out for you and paint them gold myself. No problem.
No, you can't. 6 millimeters. They're super tiny. This is really amazing of how they're doing this. Anyhow, so I really think it's fascinating when you have it in your hand and you look at it with your loupe. It's really fantastic. It's an amazing achievement. Obviously, it's always your taste, and if you don't like this watch, I can understand that. Would I like to have a different Roger Dubois? Yes, because I still like the Monégasque much more personally. But I think if a modern Roger Dubois is on the table for me, I had to choose one, I would probably go with this one. So cool. I like it. The black and rose gold is for me just really cool. Anyhow, enough of that.
Yes.
And again, thank you. But what you should not do with your Roger Dubois.
Yes. On to our on to our main topic for today. So we have to give credit where credit is due. Britt Pearce, aka Watch Gringa, did a video recently on 5 things to never do to your watch, which then, of course, got us thinking, what else shall we not do with our watches? And what do we do with our watches that we probably shouldn't do with our watches? So we want to kind of address the 5 things she mentioned. We could discuss those and then add the things she may have missed to the end of it. So I think that is a good place to start. Okay. So what shouldn't you do with your mechanical watch, right? Okay. Essentially, there is no writing on the tin most of the time. You don't know what to do if you buy a mechanical watch. You have to be somewhat cognizant of what you have and how to use it. And that is kind of the first thing she mentions, is if you have a complicated watch, you need to understand how those complications work and essentially not use those complications improperly. So there's a number of instances where this is true. Essentially, I was playing with an IWC Rattrapante chronograph, and the owner told me very, very quickly, not that I was going to do it, but he told me nonetheless, when you have started the chronograph, I don't know if it was both or one, because it was split seconds, do not press reset. I think it was when both were going. I don't know, whatever it was. There was a certain order that you had to press the things in. Yeah. And if you were to have done it the wrong way, it could break the movement. And whether the Rattrapante, no, it wasn't Rattrapante. It was a split second, right? Rattrapante is the one that goes back. Second. Is it? Okay, it's the same. Then which is the one that goes back?
That's a flyback.
Flyback, sorry. Okay, yeah, it was Rattrapante. So with the flyback, you can set the reset and it would go back and keep going. But with the Rattrapante, you cannot do this. So once again, in these cases, you need to know what it is that you can and can't push
because the two pushes that with the Rattrapante is start, stop for the first time, and then the second to continue, and then stop the second one and you catch up, whatever. There's certain things that you, depending on what kind of Rattrapante mechanism you have, of what you cannot do. It's complicated, but that's true. And especially with some of these chronographs that have a very strong push.
The Omegas, push, the Speedmaster has a very strong push. But in addition to this, I was told that there's some kind of, and I don't know if this is true because I have not pushed it hard enough, but I've gently tried to push the reset while the chronograph was running because somebody said there is a blocking mechanism, in which case that prevents you. But of course, I just lightly tried to see, is this true? But I wouldn't have put any force on it.
The thing is when you push and that's I think one of the rules that you could say is don't force your watch to do
anything.
Things.
Don't force anything. Yeah.
These are small, tiny pieces in the watch mechanism. Even the block, if you press hard enough, you will destroy either the pusher or you can destroy things, right, with your force. So usually when it tells you I don't want to do certain things, listen to your watch, use your judgment. Don't be the person who then forces it and says like, oh, you're just not doing it, because that's usually not a good idea. These are delicate things. They are strong enough to withstand 10 years of daily use, but just don't put too much force onto them if you don't need to.
And that goes also with one thing that Britt did not mention, which is it's not a complication, but it is essentially the same theory of winding your watch as well, right? Yeah. Your watch, if you're winding it, if it's hand wound, will most likely have a clutch mechanism that disengages when the barrel is
manual wound?
Full.
No. Automatic, yes.
So is it there's a stopping mechanism in my manual wind watches that don't allow it to continue?
Correct.
So what is that? If it's
that is not a clutch. This is the fully wound.
Where is the resistance of the actual thing? So you're thinking I could go beyond that if I tried.
You can't. You can, but you will probably just tear out the
exactly.
The
but
barrel.
This is the thing is, most of the time you're winding a watch, you hit this hard stop.
Correct. And this is automatic watches always have this sort of slip thing, the clutch. It's basically just a small where the end of the mainspring is connected to the case, to the barrel. This is where it can just, when you overwind it, where it can slip out and then just put into the hook the next time, more or less, right? It's a small indentation, basically. So when you wear your watch, and it's a normal automatic watch like my Pelagos, for example, and that's very easy to see. Most of the Rolex watches and Tudor watches, when they are fully wound and you continue winding them, you feel it very gritty. It feels like, there is a bit more resistance as usual. That means it's fully wound. And then you sometimes can even hear the slipping of the mainspring when you wind it, and then it goes tsk. And that is for one reason, because if it's an automatic watch, it will continue winding when it's on your wrist.
Exactly. So
and
it has to disconnect.
It has to have this kind of slip clutch or whatever you want to call it. I don't think it's really a clutch. We all call it a clutch, but it's basically something else technically. But it's like the slipping mechanism. Yeah. And a hand wound watch doesn't usually have that. Some very rarely do. There are some that actually have this built in, but in order for it not to overwind it, but most don't. So that means when you feel there is resistance, that's it.
You need to stop.
Watch is full. Yep. And then
but there's a lot of people that wind past and break things.
You can, and then you either strip the teeth of the winding mechanism, or some even worse things. I don't know if there's a worse thing.
The whole thing can go ping, and you break the actual mainspring.
But having said that, I think it's still when you have your automatic watch and you are a crazy winder, right? And you think, I want to wind up my watch, and the mainspring slips because it's full, right? If you do this and you just continue doing this for forever, it's not a good idea, because also there is a bit more wear and tear on that mainspring that also has to go back in this little indentation, right? Yeah. So it's not really super bad with an automatic watch, the so-called overwinding, because it's not really actually overwinding, but it's also, if you just have a bit of feel for your watch, that's always advisable. Let's say it this way.
Yeah. So in addition to this, it goes beyond the complications. We have also, well, I guess it's still a complication. It's not really a faux pas, or it doesn't break anything. But if you have certain chronographs, for instance, the IWC, perpetual calendars like the IWC, if you go past a certain date and you're trying to set it, there is no going back. You have to wait for this to catch up. Otherwise, you would have to take it to your watchmaker, and the watchmaker would have to then essentially disassemble something and put it back to the date and that you're currently at, right? So that's another thing that we often accidentally could do, is go beyond a certain date, which is, once again, nothing breaks, but you could be very upset for a very long time.
Yeah, there's some IWC perpetual calendars that you can set very easily with the crown, right? Yeah,
this is the crown one, exactly.
But you can't set it back. Some of the more modern ones, you actually can go backwards and forward, but so the other way around, forward and also backwards, but usually backwards is not possible. So if you have a kid and that plays around with a watch and it sets the watch to 6 months in the future, that means for the next 6 months, you better not wear this watch, because otherwise it will continue going forward.
Yeah, exactly.
And you will always have the wrong date. And as you said, you can bring it back to the boutique. They will put it to the watchmaker. He can just reset the mechanism. Normal watches with the pushers, they can do that. And also the Moser, for example, perpetual calendars, you can set backwards and forwards. So that's pretty cool. So there's a lot of these newer technologies that are really nice for that. Like the next setting that you're probably talking about is setting your date in or other functions.
Yes, that's what I was going to go into. Yes. So for instance, Britt called this number 2, but I still think a date is a complication. So messing with your complication. So it's still number 1. Essentially, there's a danger zone that is only there with quick set dates. Essentially, when your date is a quick set, it automatically will switch at midnight, right? And essentially, in these times, you're able to go in and you're able to set the date as well, right? I personally don't own a single watch with a quick set date at the moment. So I don't have this issue. But if you're able to, like on a date just, jump through the dates, then you have the risk of setting your date during, I think it's around 11 p.m. and 3 a.m.,
like
something
1 or
like
2
this.
hours before the date change.
So let's say 10 to 2 essentially is safe, right? Don't do it within those times. Anything else is fine. But the gears have already started turning for this date wheel to rotate.
Yes.
So if you override that, then
so
problems.
This is what you said. If it's a quick set, quick change, not quick set, quick change, right? Quick set is usually
no, quick set.
No, quick set is when
because
you use the crown to just move the date forward.
That's a quick set. Exactly. That's the only time you can actually change the date. Otherwise, like with my watch, you have to go all the way around to change the date.
Which watch is
Those
that?
are the two options. The Grand Seiko.
It doesn't have a quick set date.
Because it's a GMT. It's a Flyer GMT. So the GMT hand is coded to
the hour hand, the independent hour hand.
With the hour hand, I have to jump around. And there is no danger zone because...
you can, if you can set it...
No, because
can you set it backwards? The date?
Backwards, forwards, anything.
Okay.
Yeah. And they specifically said at any time, any direction.
Right. That's good. So, but you're right. I mean, what I meant with a quick change is that's what the date just does, right? It changes at 12 o'clock, click, in one click. So it releases the torque that's built up or whatever for the date change at a specific time. Regardless if it's quick change or not, you shouldn't change it because the gears start engaging
the quick set comes
for the date change, either building up power or already starting to move the date disk around. So
exactly.
However, there's even that. Modern movements, there are some that came out which said there is no more danger zone. There is a perpetual calendar that recently came out and it said, you change whatever you want, whenever you want. You cannot break the mechanism. If the pusher doesn't let you, then there you go. Some watches are doing this. They're now blocking the pushers when there is a danger zone. I think Lange, for example, does that. Or shows you a small indication on the dial, like red, meaning don't do anything. And this is really cool. I mean, there's help, right? Some watch companies do actually do something about it instead of letting you destroy your watch with this, because you could destroy your movement. I mean, to a certain extent, certain parts, and that needs to be fixed then, which is not cool. So some watch companies block the pushers or block a function when you shouldn't use it. Some show an indicator, and some, they just let you do it, and you can destroy a watch.
Yes. So that's another thing. Once again, if you have a certain watch movement where you don't have a quick set date, where you physically cannot change the date yourself, all you're doing is advancing the hour hand. And then that's fine because it's still going to build up that, the torque. It's still going to flip it over. There's no issues with that. The only time there's an issue is if you try to mechanically override the system when it's already in motion.
Yes.
All right. Number 3 for Britt Pearce. Not servicing your watch regularly. I don't know how I feel about that. She said this in the camp of servicing every 5 years or whatever the manufacturer recommends blindly without having any issues. I am on the other hand, obviously, I am on the team of I wait for something to go wrong. Because if you're going to, in my opinion, if you're going to run a service on a watch, the service itself is the largest cost. So let's say a service is, 3,000 dirhams. The parts that you may wear out that have to be replaced in case you haven't serviced it for a long time are negligible to this cost of the actual service itself.
Yeah.
And then at that point, whether you're paying 3,000 or 3,500 makes absolutely zero difference, in my opinion.
You're right. And it's also some of the things is when most watch companies nowadays, for normal watches without super high complications, say in any case, this is the fee, the general service fee, and certain parts that are being exchanged are included in this, like Rolex, for example. They don't charge you for a new tooth wheel or something like that. They will just replace it. It's part of the normal use of the watch, which covered in the service fee. If you need a new sapphire crystal or a crown or something else, that could sometimes be charged. But most of the times, even that, if it's normal wear and tear, they might just have this in the normal price, which then again says, to your point, you're not saving money if you bring it regularly, because you would pay that fee regardless either way, if they need to replace this wheel now or in another 5 years, right? Because
and maybe in that 5 years you save 3,000 dirhams.
Correct. And that for me, it's also, Rolex, for example, says every 10 years.
But I told you, I took my my wife's OP, the old one, into Rolex service at 12 years old. And it was unworn for 10 of those 12 years. And then she wore it for 2 years, right? We bought it brand new, stickered, but it was 10 years old. So it sat around. So all those lubrications and everything was terrible. It was not holding time to save its life.
Yeah.
So I took it in. And no. I took it in. They had to regulate it. They regulated it for free. And then I said, well, 10 years is what you guys say for service. What do you think? It's been 12. The guy says, no, it's fine. There's no issues.
Yeah, this is also the thing. This is like nowadays, it's a myth that the lubrication dries up. It used to with the old mineral oils. Now the new oils, they don't dry up. Do they need to be replaced eventually? Yes. But it's not really like in the old times where the oil would just physically evaporate.
Look at Tesla. Do they have any service for their electric motors, which have, spinning shafts and grease and, oils essentially in them, oil products?
I don't know. No, I don't think so, right?
Because they're most likely using some type of silicone-based lubricant that is not going to degrade like
service-free.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. There's tons of service-free stuff out there that...
Yeah, it's like, sometimes I find it very funny what the watch companies tell us. For example, Grand Seiko says for their super cool quartz movements, it is hermetically sealed from the battery department. That means service life is 50 years. So you should go up to 50 years between your services, which is insane. However, they tell you, bring the watch every 2 to 3 years to service for visual inspection and battery change or something like that. And you think, what?
So you can pay for it.
Yes. It's like, what? So battery change, you don't need necessarily to do this with a boutique, but you can, of course. There's other companies
with a Grand Seiko, I would. I think if I had a Grand Seiko quartz, I think I would go to them for the original Seiko battery.
True. But Swatch, for example, with all of their Swatch groups, battery change is free.
Is it?
Yeah. You go to to any Swatch boutique and say, like, my battery stopped, and then they'll change it for you for free.
It has to be a Swatch boutique.
They do.
Not a Rivoli. Rivoli doesn't count?
I think Rivoli does it same. You just have to
because
insist.
I haven't tried, but I'm curious.
Swatch
I don't have a Swatch boutique.
Yeah. I mean, look, the battery is only 10 dirhams at Amazon or 5 dirhams.
Not even. I bought myself for the Swatch a pack of 5 for, I think it was 10 dirhams. So you're looking at like 2 dirhams a pop. And this was the Swiss Renata batter. Yeah. So it wasn't even like a cheap off-brand. So even that had, because I think that's what Swatch was using. So whatever battery came out is the same one I bought to go back in. And it was dirt cheap. I think 15 dirhams for 5.
Yeah. So that's another thing you should not do with your watch. Let a butcher on it. Do anything, So there are people who butcher your watch, right? They will do weird things to it. Some of your local minute shop might be very, very good at it and very gentle. And some might be not so gentle. So be careful who you give your watch to.
Especially polishing, right? There's been so many butchered polishes. it's crazy how bad things can get, right? So
yeah, and especially when you feel, and I've seen recently, a nice sky dweller that was over polished, right? And you see that because I owned a sky dweller
and
myself.
it's new, it's rather new. So how can you over polish it? Like if it's a 1960s day date, like I understand.
What is it, 2014 when it came out, 2012,
Yes.
2014?
So in 10 years, you've over polished it. How the hell did you manage that?
Because the previous owner wore the shit out of it for 10 years. It had such deep cracks and dinks and stuff. And instead of filling up material and then polishing it, which is more expensive, laser welding and all of the stuff, you need to put stuff in before you actually start polishing. Whoever did the polishing job just polished it out. And when you have a very deep scratch or dink in it, you need to polish out a lot because you're just taking everything out to this level, right? Because you're not adding material.
Correct.
And that can then take the shape away, the sharpness of the angles and everything else. And it will just not feel and look like a new one.
Also, there was a guy who took this is in the forum somewhere, I don't remember where, but there's a guy who took his Hulk for service, came back with a polished bracelet.
Ooh.
They polished the entire bracelet to mirror polish. Yeah. So not just the center links, the whole case and bracelet was polished. So yeah,
shouldn't let the apprentice do this stuff, oops.
Yeah, exactly. Avoid these things. So hence, this is why we don't take things. I had a friend of mine he has the Speedmaster 60th anniversary, the trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
And he took it in because something happened. I think that the chronograph stopped functioning, and this was a brand new watch. He took it in to Rivoli for service.
Mm-hmm.
Got it back. And this is a solid case back with the commemorative writing on the back, 60th anniversary, blah, blah, blah. It came back. The whole thing was scratched to hell.
Oh.
And that's a tough one to fix because it's so many levels and layers. So these are things that do occur. So my opinion is stay away from all of these services until you absolutely need it, because then at least when you go in, you know that I had to bring it in. I had no choice. And then if something goes wrong, you comfort yourself by saying it was either this or the watch wouldn't work.
Yeah. So yeah, generally, yeah, I think this is the goal. And I think when you see the new watch movements, and I'm not just talking about in-house movements, but Tag Heuer, for example, said the new normal. Again, Carol Kasapi said, new normal is 5 years warranty, 10 years service intervals, and at least 3 days of power reserve. That's
once again, Oris, same 10-year warranty.
10-year warranty with their in-house movement, not with their bought-in movement. And that's where I think even the brands like Sellita and others who are making these new movements or improving on these movements will certainly offer certain warranty extensions or higher quality to their brands, to then let the brands offer something like a 10-year service interval or something like that. Because I think this is getting there. But on the other hand, I mean, look, I have sometimes bought watches with questionable service history, old watches that are 20, 30 years old or 50 years old. And I don't know when they were serviced. I just don't know. But the watch runs perfectly fine. So what do I do? When do I get it to service? I have no idea. I wait until something goes bad, right?
Exactly.
Either the watch doesn't
and this
keep
is the
time
thing I'm
anymore.
trying to think now. Do I have any watches that were very old when I bought them? So I'm doing a little quick. I think my used watches, no, they were all about half a year old. So I don't have that issue. So most of the time I know when it was purchased. So it's technically 6 months and there's no issues.
Yeah.
But I know where you're coming from. If I bought a vintage Speedmaster, how would I know when it was serviced? And if it wasn't serviced, would I care? If it was running perfectly.
Yeah.
So,
see, this is the cool thing when I recently looked at the new service cards from Rolex, because there was a guy who I was at the pre-owned dealer, and he showed me. He said like, this watch it has the new card, and I said, oh, cool. Can I actually scan it? And he said, yeah, sure, scan it. So I put it on my phone, and then it pops up and says here NFC whatever. Do you want to open the website? I will open the website, and then it goes to the Rolex website, tells you exactly what this watch was, how it looked, right, when it was new. And it will actually then tell you, there's a small drop down where you can see the service history and what
this is
what
for
was
the
done.
the pre-owned cards.
No, that's just the current Rolex cards.
Because the old ones, the card that I had with the NFC chip, you'd scan it and all it would do would open up the website for that watch.
Yeah. Now it actually
wouldn't do
gives
anything
you
else.
that details. I mean, it opens a website where these details are in, right? So obviously it's some kind of encrypted link in it that then shows you the details, which is pretty cool. So that means it's very transparent, and you know when the watch was last serviced. If it was serviced with Rolex, you wouldn't know if it was serviced.
If it was serviced by,
elsewhere.
and that could
Of
also be
course,
true,
right?
So you have no idea.
Yeah.
So essentially, there you go. Okay, all right, let's move
and
on.
You know, in the
to
old
next
times,
one.
how people used to do this with the servicing. The watchmakers, they would leave inscriptions in the case back.
In the case back,
They would
inside,
scratch
yes,
in, like,
correct.
serviced by Martin. I mean, the abbreviation.
And you put a date.
Yes.
Exactly. So that was funny. People still do this with cars. If you're going to do your oil change yourself, you take a Sharpie and you put the date of the oil change on the filter itself.
Right. Makes
so
sense.
that when you go to remove the filter, you know the last time that filter was taken off. So interesting.
Yeah.
All right, next. As I just bashed my watch into the table, my beautiful polished, mirror.
I hope your
polished.
table is not a basalt table of the Knights of the Round Table.
It is a nice IKEA plywood, so it's very soft. I think the watch is harder than the
Not
table.
a big marble table.
But this does. I did knock the crown, and that reminds me, or that goes to the next thing here. Brittany talks about is being too rough on a screw down crown.
I remember I've seen this episode, I think, or a little part of it, probably in the background playing. Was she talking about the person playing golf with his watch?
Yes, exactly. That's coming later. That's coming later.
Okay.
But for this, I do know what they're talking about with this, because I have heard of people stripping the screws in the crown when they went to screw it down, because they just were, crunching it.
Yes. I mean,
so by the way, random fun fact, I asked my brother, finally, after 1 year of waiting, picked up the Explorer 40 millimeter that I picked up for him at the Elaine Rolex store, right? He wanted a 40 millimeter Explorer one, and I found one just randomly on the shelf, and I said, "Is this available?" Yes. Call my brother up. Do you want it? Wire me the money. He wired it over. I picked up the watch for him. So I don't want it to seem like I paid for the watch. I'm not that generous. So essentially, I asked him, "Have you had a screw down crown before?" Because this is what I was worried about: is don't A, leave it open, and B, mash it down. And he goes, yeah. I have he has a Seamaster, the vintage one, the vintage looking one, the 300, not the 300.
Right. Yes.
But the 300. And then he pulls out the crown, and neither of them have a date. He pulls out the crown and he goes, "Where's that click for when, only the hour hand jumps?" And I'm like, "Dude, you've been with Omega too long." I forgot that Omega on random watches will have jumping hour hands,
which is
for
super
no
cool.
reason at all. But it's super cool.
Yeah,
and I'm like, Rolex doesn't do jumping hour hands.
The Panerai that I had, the Marina, not GMT, it's just a Panerai with a P9010 movement. I think it was what P9000 movement. It had jumping hours. I thought, brilliant.
It's so random.
Yeah, so cool.
And once again, the fact is, coming from something like an Omega down to a Rolex, and the Rolex is the pedestrian thing, right? In every measurable way, it is like, I don't want to say worse, but it is, right? Then the Omega has a better movement. It has he has the...
It's always the
He has
question.
the-
I mean, recently,
The Metas one. He has the Metas one, which already is better. 15,000 Gauss of magnetism, jumping hour hand versus nothing.
how many
really.
Gauss with Rolex? You don't know.
500 maybe?
No,
they were
I
saying
think it's probably more because they build now the newer hairsprings and the newer movements. I think it's probably equal.
No, it's not. I don't think so. But why would they still have a mil Gauss?
The mil Gauss was in any case.
Gauss?
The newer Datejusts had a higher magnetic resistance than the mil Gauss. This was one of the reasons why they discontinued it. And the new mil Gauss has the same case as the Explorer. So that means, you know what I mean? There is no more soft iron cage. There's no extra stuff in this movement. It has the same movement as the Explorer. It has the same movement as the Oyster Perpetual. There is no more mil. Ah, no, sorry, that's the Air King. The Air King was the same as the mil Gauss at the time. But it's basically
yeah. So I don't know what it is, but 15,000
so what I'm saying
is a lot.
I think that the Tudor movements that are Metas certified are probably very similar to the ones that Rolex already builds in. They just don't toot their horn about it. And with Rolex, you have plus minus 2 seconds, right? -2 to +2. With Metas, you have 0 to 5, which is 5 seconds of maximum derivation. And with Rolex, you only have 4.
So, by the way, this is totally random. And this is a February of this year.
Okay.
So a few months ago. But on Perpetual Passion website, there is an article saying that Rolex has filed a patent for a movement that is 40,000 Gauss resistant. Excuse me. So essentially, they're guessing that this will be the new mil Gauss.
Yeah. Which is then the
40,000.
40 mil Gauss.
But it doesn't matter because Omega has made 150,000 already.
It doesn't matter because these kind of magnetic forces you don't have, right? Even at an MRI, you don't have that. So
no,
I don't think you need it. But my point is,
I've worn mine in an X-ray room number of times. My sub
X-ray is a different story. MRI is the problem. X-ray has no.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, never mind. It was only X-rays, so
X-ray fine.
That doesn't make any difference. But anyway, okay. So there we have that. Back to the crown. By the way, the crown was what we were talking about. Anything you want to add?
Yes, I want to add something. When you force your crown in too much, because I have what is considered at Rolex and Tudor the lucky crown, a perfectly aligned crown.
Oh, that's only until you get a service.
Yeah, or you just use the crown a lot because eventually
there's
it will wear down, wear out,
exactly.
and I can now see when I close it very tight, it's already going a bit deeper in.
Yeah.
That means
yes,
the crown is something, especially here titanium is
I can tell you exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with the crown. The same thing happens with espresso machines. Nope, nothing with the threads. It's super simple.
The stem?
The gasket. The gasket is getting compressed. So essentially with an espresso machine, when you get a brand new gasket, you lock it in and it's perfectly at 6 o'clock.
Yes.
And you're just like, oh yeah, this is perfect. And then 2 days later, you're at pushing 4:30 because you're now overclocking it because that gasket is just shrinking.
Because
the more you tighten it down,
compressed it eventually, and it just stays like that.
And it just loses its rigidity, and that's what happens.
It makes sense. You are making sense for once.
Sometimes I do.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do. So, also, don't force anything. This goes back to the previous one. If you're going to set something, right? If you feel that there's a little bit of tension or doesn't feel right, stop. I've had watches that I've been looking at to buy, and I picked them up, and I wanted to. I always try to hand wind a movement to see how smooth the movement is.
Yep.
And I picked one up, and it felt like dragging, I don't even know, a shovel through sand. Right? It was like, and immediately I stopped. I gave the watch back. I said, no, thanks.
Yeah.
So this is the kind of stuff that you need to be cognizant of.
Yeah.
You know how a watch should operate. So the opposite is.
And also there's something to be said about winding your watch, right? You should sometimes If you ever picked up a Seiko 5, you pick up the watch.
You can't wind it.
You can't wind it, exactly. But you pick it up, and it basically starts winding after putting it on your starts ticking, which is so amazingly efficient, the winding system. I don't know how they do this.
Well, no. It's also twofold. One, it has very low power reserve. So essentially, when you have the low power reserve, it's quicker to get it into that the band of power.
But the newer
Meanwhile,
ones
if I have
70 hours.
70, because they reduce the beat rate to 3, but that's irrelevant. On the other hand, I have my 5-day Oris. Even with winding, I have to do probably 20 rotations before the second hand even clicks.
Yeah.
Because it's such a big mainspring. It's 2 mainsprings, right? That it really has to start compressing before anything happens.
And this is funny because at the same level, it actually unwound while keeping the everything going. Otherwise, it wouldn't be at this state, right? Which is weird. But anyhow, what I wanted to say is some movements don't like manual winding, some automatic movements, because of their construction. So the workhorse movement, the 2824-2, right? The normal ETA 38 hours power reserve movement that we all use.
That's 2424, no?
200.
2424. 2424-2.
2824-2, yeah.
No, the 2824 is...
No, that's 2892 that you're referring to.
2842?
The 2892 is fine. That has good manual winding. But the 2824, which is mostly in the Breitling Super Oceans and all of these watches, this kind of oscillator SW200, had in the beginning, I think over time now, the newer ones from Sellita, they have rectified this, but they didn't like manual winding. And I had a watch that I constantly wound manually in my first Super Ocean, Breitling Super Ocean, and you could feel this grittiness that you said, like sandpaper. Every time, even when it wasn't fully wound, when you just started winding, it just felt like the gears were not, it wasn't feeling good, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then a watchmaker told me, yeah, did you hand wind this watch a lot? And I said, yeah, I did. I said, yeah, don't do that. And I said, why? It doesn't matter. It's automatic or hand wind, right? And he said, yeah, but this particular movement has a bit of a design issue. So if you use the hand winding too much, not good for the movement. He said, other movements don't have this issue. You can hand wind them as much as you want. And I thought, oh, okay. So keep that in mind. I think Sellita has changed this in the current versions of their SW200, that it's not anymore an issue. Also, all of these variants, the La Jouperet G100, the whatever, all of these different copies of the 2824 have enhanced it. Sometimes they even increased the power reserve to 70 hours. The Powermatic 80 from the Swatch Group has also, based on the 2824, 80 hours power reserve, and you can hand wind it. So they have fixed the issue. But the old ones had that.
Yeah, but I did hear about this as well on some watches. So
next topic. Avoid moisture.
No, not one of the topics. No? Surprisingly.
No.
Wearing your bracelet too tight or too loose.
Okay.
So you want to go into this one? I by the way, I hate. This kind of upset. My wife was in the room for this section, and she said, essentially all of her watches she wears as bracelets, right? Yeah. So not loose enough to turn around, but loose enough to kind of jangle, right? Because that's the style. And this watch gringo was saying essentially, no, you have to have it tight. You have to have it tight. And she was showing like a bunch of like influencers with their watch kind of like hanging down like around the lower on the wrist, right? Because they were loose. And my wife was like, yeah, that's the style. That's what's cool. You get, and these were like, a woman with a Batman on. And it was most likely sized to the husband or something, or probably even not, and just loose. But this is the style. Having these watches loose is the current trend for ladies. So you cannot say, by the way, I don't think Watch Gringa can really speak to, what the style is.
But she is right.
Judging by her personality.
That it is not good for the bracelet.
Okay. So I just want to maintain this. There's a difference between what's cool and what's stylish,
but also
and what's
this is
functional.
Opinion. I also find loose watches and wearing them like bracelet jangling around not cool. But I am also not a style influencer by any stretch of the imagination.
Now, this is funny because you did mention this. We see a lot of people, generally from the African continent or the Indian subcontinent or these kind of areas, and they all tend to wear their watches super loose.
Yes, it's a bit of it's a cultural, not cultural. Maybe it's cultural. Maybe
I don't know if it's cultural. You had a good theory that you told me once, and you said it was because when they buy the watch, they don't know that you can get it sized. They just think that this is what the size of the watch is.
Some people probably just don't know it and then just wear the watch and then they don't even
out of the box.
Yeah, nowadays I think they know. I mean, look, if the difference is if you see these people with a bracelet, it's very loose. See them wear them with a strap, leather strap, and it's not loose. Not as loose. Why? See,
that's the question, the $1 million question.
So I think that is
essentially why shouldn't we have loose bracelets? Tell us, Ralph. Tell us.
So apparently, from this whole jingling and jangling around, you get this so-called bracelet stretch over time. While I think with newer bracelets, it is not anymore because the tolerances are there, the materials are harder, and the springs and whatever is being used is just more robust. It doesn't affect it as much anymore. But in the old movements, especially the Jubilee bracelets with lots of different small links and stuff, you would get more and more wiggle. It would just get out of shape. It would bend out of shape. It also would happen a lot with watches that had precious metals that are softer.
I was just about to say weight, not just the softer. The weight of the watch head will influence how much stretch there could be. Because, for instance, my wife with her Cartier Panthère Mini, which weighs 10 grams, I don't think wearing it loose is going to stretch it out. Ralph is holding up his Tudor by the bracelet and it is perfectly horizontal, which is, of course, meaning that there's no stretch whatsoever.
Not yet.
Not yet. Whether there will be or not is we'll see, because I don't think any of these Tudors have gotten old enough. The titanium bracelets. But yes, he's showing that you should essentially, if you put a pinky under the clasp, that is roughly correct.
If you can just squeeze your pinky in between, under your clasp on the bottom of your wrist, you're fine. Not too tight, not too loose, just so that you have the natural resistance of your skin on the watch, that it just doesn't fly around. And that should be good. That's the way you should wear your watch.
Now, some watches, I have one where I have a choice, whether it's too tight or too loose, the Cartier Santos with 0 micro adjust, 0 half links. And in that case, I go too tight. I have to go too tight so that I avoid it being too loose. And that's just my kind of preference for that one, right? Some people, I don't think anybody goes too tight, but I guess, if you went super tight as well, you'd end up either damaging the leather itself if it's on a strap, because the strap itself, I've had this before, where you get a start of a tear in the actual leather where the pin buckle goes in. And with a bracelet, you could once again start stretching out those pins and collars or screws or whatever is in there that is holding together your bracelet. Ergo, size your watches correctly. And unless you don't want to, in which case we also don't care.
If you want to wear it very loose and jingly, I personally, it just curls up my toenails. I don't like to see it.
I don't like it.
But it is your watch. Do whatever you like.
I also don't understand the people wearing the watch upside down. I never get this.
See,
and it's not that it's not sized correctly. They on purpose wear their watch with the dial side down.
You know what I have done recently? I have actually done that a few times when I was younger, just because I felt, for example, when you're driving in your car and you hold your steering wheel on the bottom, you can actually see the time.
No,
but it's a point, right? If you,
okay, if you're a race car driver and your hands are at 9 at the you glance down, you see the time. That's actually not terrible.
But I've just done that. You know, there's certain things. I mean, I know there's some people wear the watch even if they're right-handed on their right wrist just because they find it's cool or they want to identify themselves as the group who wears the watch on the right. You know, there was one manager at Volkswagen at some time, Ignacio Lopez, the cost cutter, who came in to Volkswagen to just help them cut costs. He would have his team and his loyalists all change their watch to the right wrist so they could identify themselves. And you think, okay, if that's something that you need to do just to find out that you're part of a different group.
Of the group.
But anyhow, it's wearing it upside down is of course, it can, depending what you do, it can protect the watch or it can actually expose it to more scratches.
And I was thinking exposing it, but in the car situation, I can see what you're talking about.
I mean, and every car has some kind of watch built in, so you don't actually need to look at your wrist, but hey, whatever, right? So what else do we should not do? Are we through the points that she mentioned?
No, there's one more, and that was the golf incident.
All right.
And that was, of course, the shock, essentially putting your watch or giving your watch excessive shocks.
Yeah.
So now, most mechanical movements are very finely tuned, precise little things. So if you go and you are going to hit a golf ball at, I don't know how many G's, yeah, it's probably not the best for your watch, right? I did have, by the way, a friend of mine told me this, and I've kind of thought about this. If I were to fall down wearing my watch, my body would absorb a lot of that shock that would then go to the watch. However, if I dropped the watch by itself from the same height, it wouldn't be the same force on the watch itself.
100%.
So essentially, most of the time, if you fall with a watch on, it's fine. But if you drop the watch, it is not necessarily fine.
No, it's not good. Let's say it this way. It's definitely not good for the watch. I have recently, as you know, dropped my Glashütte Original and the bezel popped off.
Yeah.
I was able to get it back on.
You got some super glue. You just
not super glue. I got, of course, the specialized glue for jewelry, right? Because you don't want to have any stuff that eats through your gold case or something.
Corrosion, yeah.
And in the end, you have no watch anymore. So I wanted to have the proper one. And I did, and I repaired it, and it looks perfect, and it's fine. But it fell down from more than a meter onto a tiled floor. And it made a loud clanking sound. Not good. Also not good for the movement. Now, the movement was robust enough to not have skipped a beat. It might have had a temporarily 1 or 2 or 3 seconds of unsureness from the shock. But other than that, everything worked as intended. There are shock absorbers in the jewels. There are shock absorbers on the places where you should have them.
Have shock, yeah.
But that doesn't mean it could have gone wrong, right? In this case, everything went right. Nothing got damaged.
By the way, I dropped my Speedy and the Hesalite crystal cracked.
Wow.
But the movement had no issue.
Yes. That's my point. The movements can withstand this, but they can also just break. I mean, I dropped a Blancpain perpetual calendar and just from even 50 centimeters, and it wasn't good for the watch. It had to go for a small service because some gears were out of place. So they had to be just realigned. Not good, but it happened. But these were the only 2 watches I've ever dropped in my life. But other than that, it's, shocks can be bad for the movement, especially other people are saying, hey, I'm using it to shoot, right? On the shooting range.
Yeah.
It's fine. Nobody says you shouldn't do it, right? You can do it because, again, the shocks that you transmit via your skin and then your bones and all of the stuff are not that bad anymore. But is it good? Maybe not.
Generally speaking, and this is my thought about the golf as well. If your body can handle it, because your body is dampening those effects
quite a lot. But the thing is, for example, Omega made a watch for golfers, right? The super ultra light Omega.
Yes.
What is it? Not Seamaster. It's
no,
Aquaterra.
It's the Aquaterra.
Was it Aquaterra?
Yeah, which is a Seamaster.
Yeah, Seamaster,
everything
Aquaterra,
is a Seamaster.
super light or whatever, right?
Yeah, ultralight.
Ultralight with Rory McIlroy and others who actually helped during the development. A super light
and
watch.
Then they took it and they made it into a jumper's watch. A pole vaulter's watch by changing the color.
Yes, they made it now into a pole vaulter's watch. What is it called again? I forgot.
It's the ultralight.
Yeah, but where?
The Aquaterra ultralight.
The website has too many.
Oh, it's
things.
not on the website.
No, it is. No, the ultralight was there. Yes, I found it.
Ultralight Olympics edition.
Ultralight. There it is. Oh man, it's still bloody expensive.
The gray one is so cool.
Yeah,
the original one.
The original, £50,000.
It's absolutely ridiculous. I don't know how anyone could think that this was, but the crown, how it pops out, it's so cool.
It is cool. It's a lovely watch, and the movement itself is made of
all titanium. Yeah. I know. That's what's so cool.
Really amazing.
As well.
But is it? Does it have to be so expensive? Anyhow,
no. When Tudor can make a titanium watch for £5,000, I don't think this needs to be £50,000.
What I wanted to say about this whole shock thing, Richard Mille is, for example, also making watches, and they have a very big tennis star as their ambassador, and he wears the watches during matches. Roger Federer, for example, is a Rolex ambassador, and he never wears a Rolex during his matches, but he always puts them on afterwards. But for Richard Mille, they're always saying, hey, our super guy will wear the watch during his matches, and it's fine. So...
Yep, exactly. Which this is the same thing, but a lot of Richard Mille athletes do this. Mm-hmm. I think they have to do this. If you look at cycling, what's his face, Sir Mark Cavendish, who's now a knight, he always wears Richard Mille cycling. As we said, Rafa Nadal always played in his Richard Mille. Actually, the one thing that they can't do is they cannot race Formula One in Richard Milles because the FIA made the ruling of no jewelry.
Yeah, it's not allowed.
On the other hand, who else do we know? The golfers are all wearing Richard Milles. So there's quite a few. But now Tudor has their own pro cycling team. And with the pro cycling team, they have been wearing Tudor's cycling, which if they are doing that, I think that's a good sign because once again, they're, riding over cobblestones in Paris-Roubaix, dirt roads in, Strada Bianchi. All of these are ridiculously shock intensive to the point where I have considered whether I should be wearing a watch or not when I'm cycling on these, really rough roads. So it can't be good for it. So I don't know. Well, once again, if a Tudor can live up to it, you do not need a Richard Mille.
Yeah, some movements are more delicate than others, for sure. I mean, Patek Philippe, for example, I think they say, no, you should not wear your watches while doing, for example, golfing.
Anything. Breathing.
Some other people saying like, well, you can wear your watch when you expose it to shocks, but it won't be as precise because it will get out of whack. It will need some time to get back in, right? So every shock can actually just give the balance wheel a few moments until it's back into the normal rhythm, right? So it is tough. If you really abuse yourself and your watch, wear a G-Shock for that.
Exactly. You could do whatever you want with a G-Shock. No issues there. That's kind of the answer to everything, right?
Yes.
Apple Watch.
Yeah.
As well. I mean, once again, it's not the end of the world. You buy your Apple Care for it. You beat the hell out of it. In worst case scenario, you pay 30 dirhams and you get a new one.
Yeah.
So it's not a bad idea.
If you have Apple Care, exactly. But
if you have Apple Care.
The thing is when we have these... when you have these issues with watches like moisture and other things and water resistance, and
we haven't gotten to water yet.
We haven't.
Britt didn't mention water anywhere in her video.
We need to mention this. Whatever your water resistance is, just be careful.
Just divide it by 10.
It depends.
No.
Now Patek said 30 meters, but the 30 meters are real 30 meters. They are saying you can do aquatic sports. You can actually dive down
Omega
to
says
30
this
meters
as well.
with it.
Omega says you can go
Exactly.
and
Omega
swim
as well.
in a Speedmaster, which everyone says, nah, bro, we're not going to do that.
So this is exactly the thing where actually now watch companies are saying, before we didn't mean it, but now we mean it.
Which is strange.
Like,
exactly.
What?
Because I don't know. Honestly, with water resistance, things like screwing down the crown, as we mentioned before, is going to be important.
Not using your pushers
a lot
underwater.
Of people, do not. By the way, G-Shock says, do not use any of the G-Shock functions underwater. As in, do not press the buttons. Because I was thinking to myself, I understand we can't use a chronograph underwater, right? Because as soon as you press the button, it breaks the seal. And if it breaks the seal, water can get in. But apparently it's the same thing with G-Shocks as well. You cannot be pressing buttons underwater.
Yeah, technically, there's gaskets, right? It's still in it.
Yeah,
but
so
yeah,
apparently that's what they're saying. Okay. So don't do that as well. But on the other hand, once again, just be careful with water.
Listen, I had a watch 50 meters water resistance, right? It was a JLC, and I washed it gently with a bit of soap. Wife's watch, right? So I washed it gently under a bit of water, flowing water. And that's it. The crown was in, everything, but it had a couple of hours later, it had condensation on the dial. So I rushed it to a watchmaker. They opened it, dried it, and then replaced some gaskets. They said, the gaskets were gone. And that was a watch that was just sitting in a cabinet for the entire time, right? It wasn't used, but the gaskets were used. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people say, bring your watch for service, is not necessarily to check the movement. It's basically to just check the gaskets, the rubber gaskets, and all of this stuff.
By all means, you can easily go to any watchmaker to do a pressure test. They could do it both dry or wet. So if you're not too sure about the watch, do it dry first, see what comes back. If it passes that, then you could go on to the wet if you wanted to. Essentially, I had that Oris with the crown, or not the crown, the crystal that was misaligned. It was not set correctly flat. And I didn't take it in water. That was my solution. And when I sold it to the guy that lives next door, I told him this. I said, listen, you're more than welcome to send it in. I'm sure it's covered under warranty. I'm too lazy to do this. However, my solution is just don't take it in water. And he said, okay, fine. So that can always be a solution, right? If you are going to be swimming in a watch, although I'm still swimming in my sub that I bought, now 6-7 years ago, I don't care really. I think it'll be fine. How much, if they have a 10-year service interval, it's going to be at least fine for 10 years without any issues.
Yeah, but even there they say if you are doing certain aquatic sports or whatever, if you expose it very, very lot of water, have it checked before. So
yes,
I think rubber stuff that can just, depending also on the temperature you use the watch on. If you leave it in the car, it's like 100 degrees hot in the summer or something. It's not good for anything, right? So always be careful with things.
Exactly. And on that bombshell, I think it is time to end. Unless you have anything else you can think about, Ralph, that we did not mention.
Yeah, I think probably a lot of things, but that's okay. We have always another episode.
Yes. All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.